I'm Bill.
And I'm Candace.
And
we're the Disruptors. Oh,
Wow.
It's getting hot up here.
No, it's fine over here. Thank you so much.
Oh, it is too hot for me. I'm a true Washingtonian.
Yeah, I noticed you had big feet, and
I have web feet.
webbed. Yeah, I didn't want to bring that.
And
up.
I don't like the heat. I don't like sunshine.
Don't like sunshine.
Well, sunshine is fine as long as it doesn't produce the heat that's beyond 78.
I see. Well, here in the Bat Cave, it seems to be lower than 78, so you're safe.
Well, that's because we've set it up that way.
Oh, okay, good.
We don't want to be in here doing the podcast, sweating to death, creating our own rain.
Oh.
See, Washingtonians can be their own rain machine. This doesn't work.
Oh, good. Well, I'm certainly glad to know that right off the first of the show, that we're not going to have rain inside there. So what would we like to talk about today, Candace? Because I know you've got some really interesting points of business that you'd like to discuss.
Well, I wanted to talk about, because it's been weighing on me, at what point, let me just digress just for a second, with all of the head tax in Seattle and the homelessness issue and all of these other things that are going on, social issues, right?
Social issues.
So I don't really want to dive into the social issues today, but I do want to dive into at what point does it become a business's responsibility to take on social issues?
Okay, in social issues, we're talking about naturally supporting different programs in this, shall we say, in the community. Is that what you're...
Absolutely. Should a business be taxed because of a social issue? Is it their ethical responsibility?
Okay. So what we want to display today, I guess, in the podcast is, where does business fit in? Where do they, or where should they be playing, and what kind of role without being forced into it by government?
Well, I think that as you take a look, big business has a voice. I mean, that's fair enough to say, right? I mean,
we've seen Amazon voice it and stop the head tax in Seattle. Yes.
Well, and it was also with Starbucks, because
True.
Starbucks followed right behind. So big business does have a voice, but Amazon doesn't normally voice their political views. They keep very quiet. But it wasn't until, the infringement of a social issue forced that voice to come out.
The lion to be hit with a
Right?
baseball bat in the head, yes.
So, because why it affects the bottom line. There's several issues, and we're not going to have time to go into all of the issues today for obvious reasons, but I just wanted to start the conversations with our listeners. At what point do you believe, please email us, that business should take care of social issues, or shouldn't they? And I'm talking about the majority of business. I'm not talking about one business here, one business there.
You really don't see that in the business area, of them coming out and putting out posters of social or taxes or political statements whatsoever. Usually they're very quiet about it.
Well, and business has been over the years, I could say maybe even over the centuries. You've had different businesses that, let's say, they were cause-based. And where, for example, Levi's, Strauss, what they do is they donate some of their monies to support anti-gun laws. Sell these ads that are, out in the West, they're in rugged country. They, maybe not so much now, but I remember as a little girl, that's where you saw them. So you certainly wouldn't have never thought of gun control and them sending money that way. But they didn't publicize it.
That's very correct. The media has really added to this whole situation, don't you think?
Well, absolutely. Especially, here recent. Okay, so let's bring it forward here. Recently, you had with Trump, you had Macy's come back and say, okay, we're going to pull your product, we're going to pull your ads, whatever that may be. We're not going to support because we're upset with you because of immigration, your view on immigration. Now, they made a conscious decision to bring out a social issue. Now, mind you, by doing so, it didn't increase their sales. Okay, so usually when a corporation has a cause, people rally behind the cause and they invest in that company because of the cause. That didn't happen with Macy's. Macy's is still in trouble. They are still looking at closing stores around the nation. What was Dick's Burgers?
Dick's Burgers came out, yes.
Okay. And you don't hear much from them, but all of a sudden, if you're going to cause us heartburn and problems, now we have to speak.
Do you think it's heartburn and problems, or do you think that many of the businesses do not want to get tied up in what they feel is going to be a political bad run? They don't want their wagon tied to that thought.
Well, I think that you're pushing a boundary that you'd better be very careful about. And let me go back to the bakery in Portland, Oregon, that refused to bake a cake for a homosexual couple. If you're going to take on social issues, then by all rights, they had a right to voice their social opinion, their personal ethics. I don't have to agree with it. What I'm saying in that is that we are on a double-edged sword, and we should really take a look at all of these aspects before we start coming out and saying, well, business needs to charge more, and we need to tax more, and we need business to fund all of these different projects, because you're on a slippery slope.
Well, they're coming back at it because they're saying to themselves, well, they're making bigger profits now, and they're doing more and more and more and more. And that money is being absorbed by their investors, and it's to them a one-way street. They think that you should be taking that money. If you're a big business, your responsibility also is to clean up messes that you have no right to even be involved in to begin with.
Well, but let's take a look at this. It costs more today to do business.
Absolutely.
So should their numbers be bigger? Absolutely.
Has to be.
But it also costs more to do business. And so to tax them, and here's the bottom line. Who actually pays for that?
Well, that's a good question.
Okay, so the end user is actually paying for...
The one that buys the product.
Absolutely. Because they're going to make their 70% or their 55%
mark on it, sure.
Markup on it, so that way they can survive. You're the man, because you're the one that's going to be suffering. Because the government's going to be paid. Taxes are going to be paid, right? You're going to make sure that all of that, which should be happening, it's a privilege. When you're starting a business, some of your very first goals are, I want to be able to make enough money where I have to pay taxes because I'm making enough money.
It doesn't bother me because I'm there.
Because it's a privilege and it should be a pleasure. But when you're overburdened, as a society, we're overburdened on a variety of different ways. And so when businesses hit with more and more costs and fees, and here in the state of Washington, it is not business friendly. No. Businesses have a variety, and I mean a variety of hurdles to overcome. Put social media off to the side, their own marketing off to the side. How about their own, just the cost of whether it's a service or a product off to the side. Employees off to the side. I mean, you have so many pressures. And, whenever they had surveyed several individuals, they asked, if you own a business, are you considered wealthy? And the average person said, oh my gosh, yes, if you own a business, you are wealthy. Well, the fact of the matter is that most business owners pay their employees, pay to do business, pay their bills, and they're still making less than $100,000 a year. Matter of fact, the average business owner is making like around $40,000 a year, and they're working 60 hours a week with no benefits. Mind you, that's something different. We won't get into that today. So what they've done is they've started a company, and ultimately what they've done is they've given themselves a job. So at what point, though, going back to the whole question that we have, at what point does it become the responsibility of a business to handle social issues?
These businesses come to town. What do? Okay. They hire people.
Yes.
They build the economy.
Yes. And they have other businesses that support that. So
absolutely. So it's a growing community, which helps the community by cash flowing through.
Yes.
So now what we want to do now is, like if that was a big faucet, we want to crank that handle down tight because some people don't want to work. Some social issues don't float. But yet if the government majority votes it through and jams it down the business's throat, as the head tax was jammed down their throat, then why do they not expect businesses to retaliate? And you also can't tell me that when They come up with these taxes, and if big business doesn't get it stopped, you know as well as I do, that's a trickling effect. It's going to go down. They're going to figure out how to modify that tax. Well, we got Amazon to pay this big tax. Now the little mom and pop grocery store down below is going to start feeling the crunch. And then they're going to sit down and think, well, wow, we have 50 million mom and pop stores. So maybe we should put a 2% tax on them also for some other unique government program that they have no fiscal responsibility to even implement.
Well, let's take a look for the new taxes that are here in the state of Washington, right, for small business.
Right.
And that was an increase in property.
Right.
Okay, so that increased the cost of doing business. The increase of fuel tax.
Fuel tax
which is another. How about the increase on utilities? Okay, and everyone's screaming, well, business in the state of Washington doesn't have an income tax. And absolutely right. And there's no tax here in the state of Washington for the wealthiest, for the our percentage of wealth. But an income tax is not the end all. We're overtaxed in all of these other areas. So in a sense, we already have an income tax. It's just not titled that. And we're more taxed, right? Just in our gas. Who pays for that? Once again, I go back to who pays for that?
The end person, you and I, blue-collar worker.
And that money is supposed to be going to take care of other social
roads
issues.
And the gas tax, roads and transportation problems, infrastructure with the freeways and all that. That's what they told us it was going to go for.
Right, but those aren't social issues.
Well,
so a portion, though, of all of the taxes that we pay automatically go to fund those different, DSHS. I'm all for having a helping hand up. I love our food banks. We support food banks.
Right.
I love clothing drives. We support clothing drives. We love education. You and I mean, the
Sure.
Tacoma Mission, right?
Right.
Incredible program.
Which does not come back to two factors. Number one, they're financially responsible.
Yes.
They make these things work. They aren't out getting the politicians to line their pockets on a program that they're only going to implement 50% of or less. Number two, they do it with the spirit of helping, not taxing.
Exactly. And and the people are benefiting. So I believe in social programs and social issues that we find a solid answer for. I don't believe in business. Here's the bottom line, Bill. You are not to be drawing firing lines. You're to be building bridges. That's why you started a business, because you had an answer to a problem, not 9 million problems. You have an answer to a problem. And once you can do that, then you're building those bridges, which is powerful.
Sure it is. And it makes a difference.
It makes a huge difference.
And it's topped with the factor of financial responsibility, which I'll harp on forever. I don't believe that the politicians ever really look on both sides of the coin. They're looking at, okay, now if I can get, for instance, let's just for a second, the latest tax, which is their recreational drug money. Why don't we ever see a lot of postings of what's going on? Some of it's coming out where some of those dollars are going. But I noticed in Oregon and Colorado, California, all the rest of them, they're coming out talking about what they've actually financed with the money.
Have you looked at what Denver's done with the marijuana tax?
It's incredible.
They have absolutely, it's riveting. It's
absolutely incredible.
It gives a good, strong case for what that can do. In the state of Washington, we don't have that. And in a sense, that's a shame, because we could.
Well, I think so too. And if you remember, every time when in the 80s we started the lottery, we were promised no more school levies.
But that's not a social issue.
Well, education.
But it's not a social issue. Social issues boil down into homelessness, addictions, right? People living on the street. We've got DSHS, child abuse. These are all,
monies.
These are all issues
problems.
of social,
right.
Runoff. Where when they tax us for roads, it's structural. And I want our roads to be good, because when I drive, I don't want to hit a pothole doing 70 and have the car go flying through the air with the greatest of ease.
Especially on the sidewalks that you usually drive.